shift the way you lead, the way you live. Clarity, courage, change. Because your next level won't wait. This is Monday Mindshift. The clarity you've been craving. The shift you didn't know you needed. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday Mindshift with Sean Michael. Glad to be here. Glad to have everyone joining. And I'm just going to open up my the LinkedIn side. Your time change up there in the US has got things thrown off. So based on the LinkedIn live, time is correct, but my restream time was not correct, and it also didn't set the time right on YouTube. So it is what it is. Anyway, glad to have anyone joining. And I'm not even sure if anybody's going to join. Let's see. I'm going to do some quick work here because I don't see anybody. Here yet. So just sending messages out. Let's see. I see Melanie's notification here. I don't know if she's live. Melanie, if you're live, welcome. I don't know that you're live because it's not showing me anybody here live. Anyway, I kind of dropped the ball this week. Didn't get things invited. Sue is here. Welcome, Sue. Interestingly, it's not showing me anybody's here. All right, let's close that down and restart. Weird. So it shows the two of you in the chat. Thank you for the chat messages because the system is not reporting anything. Maybe because I set the time wrong, or I don't know. That time change threw me off because I vowed to keep this at 12 p.m. Eastern so that it eliminates confusion for most everybody else. I just move my times when you guys switch. Anyway, thank you for being here live. I'll go ahead and get started because, of course, there is always replay. So if you're watching by the replay, please drop your comments, your questions, etc. Love to get your own. And Christy, welcome. Glad to see you here. Thank you, everyone. And let's look at what today's topic is. So as you saw from the post, today's topic is the leadership identity you built to survive, and how that identity might actually be now limiting growth. So last week we talked about, Gremlin Sue. Last week we talked about recurring patterns in business. Now, today I want to look at where do those patterns come from? Where did they start? My premise is you don't just have leadership habits, you have a leadership identity. And the reality is, most people didn't choose this identity consciously. We adapt into it. And because of that, the identities that got us to where we are today can actually be limiting growth. Now, the reality is nobody wakes up and decides, I'm going to become the controller or the lone wolf or the prover or the rescuer. These are identities we form under pressure. You learn what works, you learn what you have to be to succeed. It can be things like, I need to be exceptional so I can't be overlooked. Or I need to carry everything or it will fall apart. Or stay self reliant, don't depend on others. Or this one. This one was mine big time. Keep harmony and peace so conflict doesn't cost connection. Whether it's for me, for you, for anybody who's watching, these adaptations create results. They're intelligent. They help us build early successes. Let's validate that with ourselves. The identities that we've carried are what built the successes we've had in our life. It's not pathological, right? It's not anything wrong. It's a strategy that worked in the past. Right? We adapted based on the situations we faced, and they worked to get us to a certain point. But part of growth is evaluating, do I need to do an update? Just like our software on our phones, our computers, right? We get those notifications, software update tonight, software update tonight. Our mind needs some software updates, our identities. And hello, Sharon, welcome. And without those updates, when we continue to operate in what worked in the past, there can be a hidden cost. It's where our leadership plateaus, because the strategy that once created growth for us becomes a limit of our range. Right? The person with who's the controller struggles to scale. The prover finds it hard to rest. The lone wolf tries to do everything, doesn't know how to delegate. Good morning, Liana. And the rescuer, they don't do so well with standards and boundaries. It's not a lack of skill. It's because that identity narrowed possibilities. The reality is, when we're in these identities unchecked, we don't operate from our freedom, we operate from our familiarity. Let me repeat that. We don't operate from freedom, we operate from familiarity, because we put ourselves in a box and we don't check it, so we just keep operating the same program. We don't update the apps, we don't update the operating system. All right, so here's where I want to get deeper. Your leadership style, some may say it's personality. I say it's not personality. It's deeper. It's our self concept, right? It's the reality, it's the set point. We've talked about this before. We have our set point of where if we start to cool down, we bring it back up. And we start to excel, we pull it back down. And our self concept is who we believe we are. Who do we believe we're, what do we believe we're capable or deserve? So, once again, our leadership, yeah, perfectionism. Self concept is just that idea that you carry about who you are, right? If you've ever heard someone say, that's just the way I am, and it's not, this is who we carry, right? It's very personal. It's not what I wish I was, it's not what others think. It's the internal version of me. What am I capable of? How valuable am I? What is my modus operandi, right? Or MO? How do we operate? What is my role in the world? It's a quiet sentence that you probably don't even hear that says, I'm the type of person who, right? For the, it might be, I'm the type of person, I'm the one who holds things together. I'm the kind of person who's always trying to prove myself. I'm the type of person that people rely on. I'm the kind of person that works harder than everybody else, etc., etc. And that picture is our operating system. Once our mind believes that's who I am, it will produce behavior to reinforce that, to keep it intact. And as we said, under pressure, you don't rise to the level of your strategy. We don't rise to the level of our strategy. We default to this self concept. Who do I believe I am? What do I believe I'm able to, allowed to, how do I normally operate? Right? Most of my life, I was the peacemaker. I said, "Oh, it's just my zodiac. I'm the Libra. And I like things to be balanced and peaceful." So what did I do? I ran from conflict most of my life. I avoided it. Say nice things, don't upset anybody, don't cause conflict. If there's conflict, get out of town. The key thing is these beliefs, we formed them long time ago, before our current position or title or role, etc. So my question here is, what did you learn you had to be in order to achieve, to succeed, to get the things you got? Not what you prefer, again, not what you prefer, what you had to be. As Sharon says, the perfectionist. Yep, been there, done that. The procrastinator, the peacemaker, the high performer who never takes any rest. Fill in the blank. Now, here's a little warning. This might get uncomfortable. I'm okay with that because it's truth. And sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. Yes, head in sand syndrome. Yeah, something like that, Sharon. Yeah. Often we pick up some of that, Sue, right? We see the roles that our parents, the self concept that our parents are operating from, and we adopt it some, right? I heard, one parent was go 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 go, and the other one was like tapping the brakes all the time. And for this person, that's how they saw their lives, is like I alternate. One moment I'm like go 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 go, full on the gas. I would say, Martha, it's more than just being older. Yes, older normally means wiser, right? But it's also, as we said, being aware of what's going on and making the updates. Just like other software, sometimes it will auto update, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you have to get in there and push a button to update the software. It's the same with our mind, right? Some things will auto update as we get older, as we have new experiences, they'll automatically update. But some of it we have to manually update. All right, back to the uncomfortable truth. If identity stays fixed, our growth range is also fixed. Which means we can optimize systems all day long. But if there's no evolution with that internal operator, the ceiling stays put. Fire starter. Well, imagine this, Sharon. I'm a Libra married to a Gemini. That's brought some challenges. So as I was saying, if the identity stays fixed, growth range stays fixed. We can optimize, implement strategy after strategy, system after system, but if we don't update the core internal operator or evolve, the ceilings stay put. There's also a layer underneath that. When you feel that tension around scaling, it's not only structural, it's what I call identity friction. Part of you has this sense that the old strategy isn't needed anymore. And another part, it feels unsafe without it. Like I need this. I need that strategy. One part saying, no, we need to update it. We need to ditch it. The other part saying, no, 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 I need that. It's not safe without that. And then that creates internal conflict, which exhibits in some of these ways: micromanagement, overcommitment, decision fatigue, isolation, or emotional reactivity. Your business, your life, your relationships, everything mirrors your internal identity. All right, let me look at comments. So Aries, Libra. So change is hard if we think it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but I also am not one to say it's hard. Taurus. And then Martha shares, we outgrow people and situations when we learn and educate. Sharon, the universe is infinite, abundant. Growth and expansion is available for anyone. Be in receptive mode. Yes. Amen, Sharon. If we're open, we can evolve. But if we're closed down and we have those walls and ceilings, the container of our self concept of our identity, it can limit us. So, what do we do? Well, my first practice today is the identity audit. This is when you get inside, invite reflection with yourself, and you can write this down. The leadership identity that built my success is, and then after that, you can follow it up with, it helped me by. Okay, why is this copy paste not working? There it is. And then go deeper with this question. It limits me when. I feel like this is the question. Like, it's easy to go with, to answer that question, to notice what helped me get to where I'm at and how it helped me. But we neglect to look at how dropping it is not good for the phone, Sharon. Just a side note. I found it doesn't help it run very well. All right, so the deeper question, it limits me when. So we're looking, where are those limits? All right. And then beyond that, if I no longer needed this strategy to feel safe, what would change in how I lead? And remember, when I talk leadership, I'm not just talking about leadership titles or positions, your situation, yourself. It's self leadership. This is the threshold, is when we look at it and say, if I no longer needed it to feel safe, what would I change? What would change in me and how I lead myself, how I show up in life, in business, etc. Looking at my notes because my notes in Restream do not have Happy Monday. Tripod broke too. Wow, that is total Mercury retrograde, Sharon. All right, so our second exercise our standard two-chair dialogue. In each of us as leadership, it was in a weird place. I don't remember where though. Oh, by the front door, honey. All right. Inside every leader, especially one that's growing and evolving, there can be two voices. One is the old identity that built the success, and the other is the part of you ready to go wider, to scale up, to step up into the next level. So imagine you're sitting in the chair, first chair one. That's the leader you learned to become. And that version might say things like, if I don't carry the weight, things will fall apart. I'm not exceptional. If I'm not exceptional, I'll be overlooked. If I rely on others, I lose control. If conflicts happen, relationships suffer. Use your own words. That old version that got you to where you are, what would they say? And finish this sentence. The reason I lead this way is because. Now remember, that identity helped you succeed. It protected you. It got you to where you are. Honor it. Then you shift to the second chair. Obianuhu, welcome. Happy new week. Happy Monday. In the second chair, that's the leader in you that doesn't need those old strategies. That's survival identity, right? This is the upgraded version. And that side can ask, what no longer needs to be carried? What could be delegated? What truth could be spoken kindly but more directly? What responsibility can be shared? Finish this sentence from that position. If I no longer needed that old strategy, I would. And just sit with that. Then we bring them together. The goal is not to eliminate that identity. It served, it had a purpose. But maturing in leadership means the old identity doesn't have a vote anymore, right? It's about who's in the driver's seat. Michael, welcome. Remember this, that old version, that old identity, that old strategy doesn't have to run things today. All right, so as we said, it's about uniting, like moving driver role to the updated, evolved identity. Think of it this way. The old rule is, this is just who I am. This is just how I am. The update is, this is who I learned to be. Because anything that's learned can be evolved. Leadership maturity, leadership growth, it's not so much about becoming someone new. It's about expanding beyond who we had to be to get where we are today. Right? It's It's about allowing its expansion. So let me reaffirm this. You didn't consciously choose your leadership identity. You adapted into it based on experiences, based on what was happening at the time. And that identity served. It did what it needed to do. You experienced wins. It got you through the phases of life. Honor that. Right? It's valuable. What we want to do is we don't let it be the ceiling. We don't let it be the limit to what's possible now. Because growth at this level is less about doing more and more about operating from a wider internal range, experiencing more freedom, more flexibility, instead of being locked in a box. So if you are recognizing an old identity that you have outgrown, that's not a flaw. It's a threshold. And that's what the identity clarity call that I offer is about. It's where we can separate who you had to be from who you're ready to become, and look at designing your leadership from this evolved or upgraded place. So if you're ready to operate beyond the strategy that got you where you are, that built who you are today, send me a message and let me know. We'll book it. We'll get you on the schedule. We'll have a conversation. Look at where your ceiling is and where you're ready to go and how to upgrade it. All right. Let's go back and connect chat. Don't we all, Sharon? Right? Respect those that walk their talk. Those that take their own medicine is the way I always heard it. All right, let's get the invite link. As always, the second last final 15 minutes, I like to open it up to guests on stage. So if you feel so inclined, love to hear from you. Camera not necessary. But this new live stream format has made it a lot harder to, the old days, people could just raise their hand in the audio rooms. It's a little more challenging now. So we adapt. I'd love to hear what resonated for you, what lights went off for you. If not, we can wrap this up early. But the key message here is it's not like most of the time, we try to upgrade performance, we try to install better habits, more discipline. But I would say that real growth happens when we update the core system, the identity. And this isn't about abandoning the old identities, it's not about shaming them. Greetings, Leslie. Welcome. Hope you had a good lunch. I think I know why Leslie has that 30-minute. I need to reformat, I think. Start the teaching a little later, do 15-minute warm up something. I don't know. I'm going to definitely reevaluate that. And as always, send me a message, drop a comment. If there's a topic you would like me to talk about or discuss, and even we can discuss it together on stage live instead of, you saying, "Oh, let's talk, can you talk about this?" And then I build something. Let's have a live conversation. When I do those for daily power boost, they're so powerful, right? I meet with different people from different areas of expertise. Like tomorrow, the latest is that Miss Melanie.
How are you, darling? Good to see you.
Good
And
to hear you.
thanks for the heads up about the challenges on LinkedIn today. As I'm laughing watching your amazing gems, and LinkedIn kicked me out twice. So
Oh,
kicked
that's
me
so
out twice.
frustrating.
So it's I don't think it's just restream. I think that's the thing I wanna. I think we're just overloaded with tech. Is
Potentially, because I've been watching various, whether it's Felipe and Melissa or Leslie's or Annie's shows or yours, and it doesn't seem to matter whether I'm using it on my laptop or my phone. It just boots me, and I've got to reload LinkedIn. It's frustrating.
I'm smiling because LinkedIn on my desktop gives me an out of memory, uh, and it just says poof. But the fun part, as Leslie would say, it usually happens when we're inviting guests for our live streams. But I'm delighted to pop in and just join you today. And
And
sorry
I'm
to be off
delighted to have
camera,
you.
but the introverts, saving some energy for going live in an hour and a half.
No worries, Mel. No worries.
I thank you for your topic today. You're reminding me I was on a panel with Lachelle Atkins, America's Supermom. She wins March. Lachelle launched it last week with a conversation about leadership. And what you're reminding me is Lachelle asked a question about leadership myths. And I think you're really tying into that conversation for me in the sense of we watch leaders, we aspire to be, to you know, to absorb or to learn. And Leslie would say it from a perspective of truths or acquiring skills. And I really just want to thank you for just reminding us about that. It can feel like a Jenga game or a puzzle. And I really thank you for your timing of just exploring that.
Well, it's my pleasure. Like leadership, you and I have talked privately about the the thing I've been working on, the book that I've been working on. And I have four chapters in the intro in the document, in the manuscript. Still needs more tuning. But I was on it's called dream lifting. So the host is very energetic, and she's created this container where people can come and share their dreams, and we all support each other to lift the dreams, to help see those dreams be born. And when I was talking about the book, she's like, I'm going to hold you accountable to do your writing. And she sends me a message every week. How's the writing going? How's the writing going? Because she said, I'm not just feeling this is an important topic for business and leadership. She's like, it's, bigger than that. She said, I feel like this is for humanity's sake. So it kind of lit a fire under me
I'm smiling at that
as
because
much as possible.
I'm smiling because of your encouragement to call myself an aspiring author. So I want to thank you for acknowledging it. When you start in the process, we really can get stuck at different stages. But I think the thing is gently to remember it's never a work of art. Books are meant to be upgraded, to be revised, to be edited. And I think one of the things from the perspective of Mindshift and all our conversations about identity is it doesn't have to be a complete recipe. It just has to be the beginning. And sometimes too, I think from the perspective of occasionally getting stuck in writing lately, and I can say it kind of for the last month, I've been in a pretty linear mode. I think sometimes we get too attached to the words, if it makes any sense. So I'm actually starting the process of talk to text, which is something very different. It's to stop the pen from getting frozen. And as you're the identity disruptor, I think thinking of leadership identities, there's find one that you want to help us with, or find two or three at the max, because there's so many different types.
Well, and just like the writing, right? Things, it can evolve. It doesn't have to be 100% on the first publish, right? As we say, it's not written in stone. The same thing with the identities. Like, they don't have to be, they're not written in stone. They're malleable.
They are, but some people have a hard time with the adaptability part and, with the flexibility part. I think they think, this is the hat I put on today. This is the persona. These are the roles or the tasks I'm trying to fulfill today. And I think sometimes it can, just like on the days when you're facilitating, so you're dressed a little bit differently than you normally would be, you know, or it's a day for putting on different hats. And I think part of what you're saying really reminds me of the survival part of it. And sometimes that is the hardest part as leaders. Sometimes we're challenged in the roles, we're challenged in the cultures, we're challenged to rewrite the stories. But I really appreciate your question. If I no longer needed the strategy to feel safe, what would change in how I lead? And I think my answer would be the awareness part, which I really was never aware of 4 decades ago in leadership. But Lachelle had asked a question about a leader that I admired, and I pulled up a wonderful woman by the name of Lauren back in the Garment Center days. She was so aware of every team member, of every need, of every project, and it was a superpower that she kind of brought, whether it was in a meeting or in a conversation. And her powers of observation, I think about I think that's the part I would change about how I used to lead. I never used to share the observations or the awareness, and kind of you would say it's a superpower. We don't
Right.
always we don't always show that. In safety, sometimes showing that level of awareness can make us feel unsafe.
And I think it's key. I think we also have to be clear on observation versus evaluation, right? When Kimberly and I did the book study on nonviolent communication, that was a big theme, right? Observation versus evaluation. And that applies externally and internally, right? Observation is looking at it from an open perspective, like, hey, I noticed this. You're just acknowledging what you see. You're not evaluating it at any level that it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's That's something we have to work at to learn, right? Because it's not always something we observed in our life, right? We usually adapt to what we've seen. And case in point, I was helping before this event, I was helping my little 8-year-old Angel with work. And he just, if you're doing this, you're not very smart. He like just spit it right out. And mom went all on into him. She's like, that was very disrespectful to your daddy. And he went off and cried because that's what he does. When he realizes he's disrespected somebody, he feels very, very badly. But it was a good point to show evaluation, right? You're not very smart if you're doing this, versus observation. Like, I realize you're trying to help, but I don't need it, or something like that. Of course, he's 8. I don't expect him to say that, but I think it's just a good illustration of that.
Your son is kind of amazing, as both of his parents are. A really intelligent, a wonderful light. I think sometimes too the thing is, and I'll say it from a mental fitness perspective, where we talk about the judges, and in the beginning of the mental fitness journey that started for me 4 years ago, I couldn't see external judges, if that makes any sense. I could see my internal ones. I could hear them, loudly. They would weigh in. They had a lot to say, and but I think what I had to learn about acknowledgement was sometimes to acknowledge silently, and I think that's the part of observation. People encourage us sometimes to repeat back what we've heard. Let me make sure. Let me. This is what I heard. This is what I understood. This is what I felt you were saying. And I think sometimes just that process of, we talk about it all the time, about holding space or holding sacred space. But I love the part of what we're both acknowledging. There's there's a part that sometimes needs to be unsaid. It just needs to just be, from a perspective of awareness. And I think that was the part that really took me ages to learn as a leader. I was in operations. I was supposed to be in every kettle of fish. I was supposed to be in every conversation. I ended up being HR and IT and you know uh, the accounting department and whatever other hat my boss felt I needed to hold to complete a project. But I think I had to really learn the patient part of silent observation, because I think sometimes as a leader that part is so important to help encourage team members to kind of step into their identity, to step into their roles. I'm honored now to have a really small and mighty team, but the lovely thing I love is we're not confined to one identity. And I think that's the invitation from a survival perspective, if we have the flexibility or if we have the adaptability. So I want to thank you for that invitation there, and especially through the eyes of your son.
Yeah, he's one of my major teachers. So here's a nice little touch. Let's see, is it going to work? Oh, yes, it does work. So, this is the introduction. And if you're okay, Melanie, you can stay on stage and I'm just going to read it. So, since we're talking about leadership, the leadership crisis no one trains you for. They say leadership is lonely, but it's not the kind of loneliness they warn you about in management books. It's not the missed social hour, the pressure of decisions, or even the weight of being responsible for people's livelihoods. It's the ache of looking around at what you've built and quietly wondering, why doesn't this feel like me anymore? I've sat across from founders with with $1 million exits who felt like frauds every time they stepped into a board meeting. Nonprofit leaders who cried in stairwells after staff retreats they were praised for because they knew they'd abandoned their deeper convictions to keep the peace. Coaches and consultants who could teach confidence all day long, but still whispered apologies every time they raised their prices. And I've lived it too. In the fourth grade, I was tested for the GATE program, gifted and talented. I crushed the math. I was reading at a high school level. Everyone told me I was brilliant, exceptional, meant for more. But what no one saw was that praise became pressure. I started picking only the classes I knew I'd ace, avoided things that didn't come naturally, because deep down, I wasn't building confidence. I was borrowing it. Achievement was my mask, validation was my drug. And that story followed me into leadership and for most of my life. We live in a culture obsessed with the outer layers of leadership: productivity hacks, communication frameworks, executive presence workshops, vision boards, KPIs, OKRs, and MBAs. But when your outer success outgrows your inner identity, no one prepares you for that moment. No one teaches you what to do when the strategy still works, but you're secretly drained by it. When habits are locked in, but you hate the version of yourself they serve. When the team believes in you, but you're no longer sure what you believe. That's the quiet crisis.
I'm really letting it resonate from the perspective that, as always, my dear friend, you are helping me prepare for today's live stream, which is about replenish trust. And I think that's the part that's in there. You also, that part where you added in that it followed you into life, I think that's an important part of the story, because I think sometimes um, we separate as leaders the different roles. And really, when we show up, it's about bringing our full self, the professional and the personal, and and sometimes bringing also the dreams of our future self. Sharon Rose said it well, that she loves it. I really did too. It really resonated, and I took a breath almost to celebrate where you're at in this process. And like Leslie's telling in the comments, you're going for your first crappy draft, and to just remove that mm, I can't even say it's a progress or a perfection kind of thing, but you have so much wisdom in the facts of, and in your generosity of what you're sharing to help us all also move forward. Just know someone is going to read your book and be so affected and changed by it that hopefully you'll have a chance to have a conversation with them one day about how it changed their life. And I think sometimes in that, I always call it our fragile AI world now, where, leadership is not for the faint of heart. And I think your story is a really great reminder of that. I think also it's a reminder too, sometimes when we show up, the high achiever, the high performer, they're looking for the grade, they're looking for the feedback. I found for myself recently in leadership, I've been taking a bit of a sacred pause, and I gave myself permission to do that, kind of as a holiday gift. And to take the pause just to be able to pull back and kind of reclaim some space, some of the return on energies that I'm always talking to other people about, from a perspective of sustaining it. And I think somewhere in there, there's a fabulous presenter, and I'll look up his name. He did a presentation at our clients conference on "I give myself permission," and he had us say it at the beginning of his conversation, and the room was kind of weak. And at the end, he was able to get a couple of hundred people to all stand and to really say it like we felt it. I give myself permission. And I think, like you're saying about building something to survive, we need to think about the identity we want to build to thrive,
Amen.
and to really to flourish. Because I think your story reminds us of that. It changes, our vision changes. Something within you changed in the process of this program. And I think I love your honesty about the validation. I remember the first time someone said that word to me. It was my mom when she says, you were supposed to follow exactly in my footsteps. And so my mom and I had this conversation about validation. And I really appreciated the lens. I didn't necessarily appreciate the subject matter, but I appreciated getting her definition of, of validation. But I think the hardest part is really the identity part, and to accept that that identity can morph, kind of shapeshift, um, and really just to thank you for that and for sharing part of the beginning of your book. You were so beyond on the right track, but you knew that already. Just lean in and give yourself permission to put Sean's stamp on it.
Yeah, that's a powerful story because I've seen that before too. Whether it's I give permission, it's like, yeah, you get this like lackluster. I give myself permission, but it's great that he got such a buy in. I was reading about it in another book where at the beginning of the event, the question was asked, and it was like two people raised their hands. And by the end of it, like the majority of people were raising their hands. And it was actually a presentation before a company team. And actually, the two people that didn't raise their hand ended up, one left the company and the other one, I don't remember what happened, but the company thrived because they moved into this updated thinking, this updated identity, and the company didn't just survive, they thrived. Because I believe we're all meant to thrive.
And I love that from the perspective of thinking of others flourishing, kind of like the blooms. As I'm laughing, it's almost, we're borrowing a little bit of your weather today. It is almost 70 degrees as we're still looking at, the snow out in front of our house and on the lawn. But I think I like to think of it from the perspective as flourishing. And Sharon's saying something that I was thinking about. For empaths, awareness can't be turned off. Sharing can be risky. And
I would rephrase that. I would say sharing feels risky.
but it, as a during Women's History Month, I really understand the use of Sharon's word "can." It's the same thing we would approach from an affirmation perspective. I will. I am. Um, Ken acknowledges the can't part, if that makes any sense. When we're sometimes we're taught, okay, it's safe to share. Sometimes it's not safe to share, and sometimes you're in a culture where, um, I'm reading Audre Lorde's book, about, our silence can protect us, but sometimes we're taught that through a different lens.
Yeah. Well, and I would say this ties into what we're talking about, leadership identity. When leadership is settled in their the right identity, psychological safety at the lower levels flows more naturally. Because, like you said, you gotta, when you're sharing, empath or not, when you're sharing, there's always that question. You talk about it, trust, right? Can I trust this space, these people, with this level of my depth? Because it it can be risky. One of my own stories, I was in a sealed container that was supposed to be utmost safety, and there was a leak.
That's really hard, and I think it's part of being in spaces where our vulnerability and our transparency are respected, and sometimes the energy changes in the room where we're not aware that we're arming someone with information uh, that they won't cherish, and that doesn't show mutual respect. So I'm really sorry that happened to you.
Yeah, it sucks. But, I went through the forgiveness process. I acknowledge it as a fact, but, I'm not carrying the burden of that any longer. It was out.
And I love Leslie's comment. That's why Leslie thinks you should trust yourself, as you'll never get in a room where you trust
That's the
everybody.
foundation, isn't it? Um, I was in a LinkedIn Live last week, and it was about confidence. And the thing I kept going back to is confidence starts with self trust. And it ties into updating our identities. When we're clearer on our identity, the evolved identity, confidence comes more naturally.
See, I remember being from the generation where they used to teach us fake it until you make it. I'm grateful now to be certified in trust and to have a different perspective from the trust journey. But it was a pleasure listening to you in that conversation on confidence. And I think also it's confidence is a gift we can acquire, we can we can treasure, and confidence occasionally can be temporary. So I think the real reminder, just like in the room that you were in where someone didn't respect your privacy or your transparency or your vulnerability, to realize it's a gift that can kind of change into something else at other times. But I am delighted to join you today, dear
And I
friend, and
appreciate
to
you
listen to your
joining me.
gems.
And
We appreciate you
I
too.
appreciate everybody in the audience, the office, the audience. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have an amazing week. Shine on, shine bright, and change the world one moment at a time, I would say. As Mel says in our, well, how do you say it, Mel? In our fragile,
Fragile AI world.
yes. And in closing, like, I'm going to play the video again for my outro that AI made for me. So, thank you, Mel, again. Thank you, everyone listening. We'll see you all next week. Remember, send me a message, drop a comment. If there's a topic you would like to see covered on Mindshift, let me know. I'm here to serve. That's the first step of that's what I'm about, is serving and being here to offer a space and presence. That's me. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye bye, Mel.
Take care, love.
In the shadow of a mirror, where the past holds tight, he walks in with fire, igniting the night. A true seeker's vision, he shines through the black. With every step forward, he won't look back, telling tales of struggle, the masks we wear. We're bound by the labels, lost in the snare. Time to break free from those chains of